Hey guys, welcome to Professionally Curious, another episode of 100 Most Insightful People in Crypto, by, I think, many people's standards, including mine. So here we have Trent Van Epps, also known as Trent.eth. You will definitely see his tweets on everywhere. And personally, I really glad to have you on the show. And yeah, we've been friends for a while, so I really thought that you have a lot of unique, not only experiences, but views about the industry. Why don't we start with some introduction? What do you do? What's your backstory?
Sure.
And maybe just even go back to how did you get into crypto in the first place?
Sure. So one of the things I love about crypto is that it hasn't kind of stagnated into this credentialism where it's like, okay, I went to this school and I got this degree. I work with people who have a background in chemical engineering or physics. It's like, this is super common. And I think it's one of the things that makes the people so interesting, and maybe I see part of that in myself because I'm not a developer. I don't have a computer science background. I actually studied architecture originally in school, like buildings, and I did that professionally for a few years, and I did commercial interiors like restaurants and some residential buildings, and actually did furniture as well. So that's like an entire separate life that I had before all this. And then maybe like 3 or 4 years of doing that professionally, I just stumbled upon Ethereum. I think it was on Reddit, and quickly fell down the rabbit hole of some of the early demos at the time. And again, I'm not a developer, so I really tried to find ways that I could contribute to the core development process of Ethereum. This is about 2015, 2016. I just started to show up to these core developer calls. They're completely public, accessible, anybody can join, and I was just kind of one of these random people who showed up. And
the nerds.
Yeah. And it was fascinating to me.
I remember those days, yeah. It's like everyone can join the EF, what do you call those? Like team calls, right?
Well, it's just like the all core development calls.
Yeah.
It's like every 2 weeks, all of these people from different teams come together and just talk about whatever important topics are happening. It was really compelling that I could have an insight and then eventually start contributing actively. But in the beginning, it was more of a passive observation, taking in information, trying to understand the kind of social and political underpinnings for this political economy. And I guess one of the things that made me so interested in this is that, architecture is, it's systems design. We have windows, it lets in light, they let in air. You have all of these systems that interact with each other, and they have to be coordinated in a thoughtful way. And distributed systems, it's in the name. These are systems as well. And so there were these parallels that I think pulled me even deeper.
Yeah.
And I think what kind of sealed the deal was, I'm interested in furniture. It's a design system on a very small scale for the human. Then you have buildings, it's a larger scale. And I've always been interested in cities. And network design is like a system on the scale of the whole Earth. And so it was just like the scale combined with the novelty and how fast-paced it is, which just pulled me in. And it's been, I guess, 10 years. But I only started working full-time in 2018, 2019. Worked at a couple companies, and then joined the EF, the Ethereum Foundation, in 2021. And we can keep going from there, or do you want to jump in?
No, I mean,
questions?
let's get into that, because I think most people kind of know you as the core contributor to EF,
Sure.
And certainly also working on the this really interesting initiative. I want you to explain a bit more about Project Guild. I wanted to kind of get into the whole early, not founding stories, but still early days of EF, right? Like in that the time that when you joined. How do you view your time at EF? Like how things have changed? What are the the biggest learnings, takeaways from that?
So I think the biggest lesson that has been repeated over and over again is that, and maybe one of the misconceptions that people have about the EF is that it's not the sole director of the path that the network takes or the shape that the software is ultimately going to take. It really is an ecosystem of many different players, whether you can call this like pluralism or multipolarity. Yeah. There truly are, this isn't just like I'm saying this, but there really are many independent entities that kind of steer the ship that is Ethereum. And over we're reminded that while it may be challenging to come to consensus or to get people to agree on what this kind of figuring out process actually looks like,
right.
in the long run, this is healthier. So many of the projects I worked on, for example, I joined the ETH in 2021, and there had been this long-term project to move from proof of work to proof of stake.
That's right.
And now this is like, the industry standard is proof of stake. But at the time, Ethereum still had this tech debt that they needed to move past, and this large-scale transition would not have happened if you didn't have the entire ecosystem engaged and pushing towards this common goal. So I think that's like maybe one of the biggest takeaways from those early days and projects after it. So I also worked on kind of markets, getting the stakeholders in the broader ecosystem engaged in things like 1559, which helps to create a good block space market has benefits for the end users. And then other like larger projects like the KZG ceremony, which was a trusted setup to kind of a prerequisite for the data availability blobs that Ethereum uses today. So that's just a few of the projects I worked on there.
Yeah, and what led you to start working on the new initiative or current initiative?
Yeah, so I've touched on how software doesn't kind of emerge from the ground. I like to frame, over the years I've come to think about Ethereum and any like complex software ecosystem as a commons, if people are familiar with this term. If you're not, that's fine. But generally it's like a system for producing or stewarding shared resources. So maybe historically this would have been like a forest or a shared pasture or a fishery. Like there's a ton of natural analogs, but software is the same way, but it doesn't emerge from the ground fully formed. It requires this active engagement, continuous tweaks. Like if there's a bug, you've got to fix the bug. If you want to change the software, it requires humans to agree what those changes should be.
Yep.
And this commons, it's built on open source software, so it's freely available, and people can engage with it, change it, modify it. And I think it maps really well onto Ethereum. And some of the work I've done has been looking through this frame as how it applies to Ethereum core governance. And one of the outcomes of this is a project called Protocol Guild, which you've mentioned a few times. And it's a very simple concept, but I think it has some deeper ramifications for how the political economy is maintained. So it's the simple description is it's just an independent organization that provides funding to this collective of people that are working on making the software. So it's just a funding mechanism that maps, in my opinion, more accurately to how this software is maintained than a single company or a single nonprofit. It really is this diversity of different organizations and different teams, and we basically fund the individuals as a collective across many, many different organizations.
That's awesome. And do you think the idea behind this has to do with like the different chains that are working towards Ethereum scaling should be also kind of repatriating value back to ETH L1?
Yeah. This is the kind of one of the big tensions in open source software is that in order for it to have value, it has to be accessible. It has to be forkable. People have to be able to use it and experiment with it in some way. And I know there are licenses that bake in, you have to pay this licensing fee. But really, open source software is most powerful when it's free for people to use. That's when you can have radical reimaginings or using it in a different context. This is when it's most powerful. But the tension is that while it's most successful and most accessible with a permissive license, oftentimes getting funding for it is really hard. But you need people to get paid to maintain it. However, like a lot of this software, for example, the core client implementations, it would be really, really bad if they were monetized or they were taking a cut of every transaction. You get into a very different dynamic than what we have today. And so Protocol Guild tries to look at this challenge of, okay, how can we provide a vehicle for the broader ecosystem to kind of close this value creation loop. Right. We have people creating software. The software is used on layer 1 or layer 2s, or the EVM is taken in different contexts. this is good and people should experiment with it. However, prior to 2022, when we launched Protocol Guild, there was no comprehensive way for this broader ecosystem to kind of close the value loop of, hey, we're building businesses, we're building products, we're building L2s, we're building these really incredible experiments, some of which will be successful, some which will not, but this value loop didn't exist. And Protocol Guild is what we found, I'm happy to say, it was like the broader ecosystem recognizes that they do have a role to play in funding this work. And so it's a vehicle that's appropriately scoped and scaled for the need of this particular stewardship project.
Yeah. What is the current, the 3-6 month initiative or any like current projects that is your main focus?
Yeah, I guess, well, it's not a very satisfying answer, but like, because it's a new organization, we're really just concerned with, even though it's been a couple of years, we still do a lot of work of educating why is this important? Why is this necessary? Or for things like any norms that we're building, for example, we run this thing called the 1% pledge, which, as the name suggests, is projects will commit in advance to contribute 1% of their token supply. And any funding we raise, including this 1% pledge, vests over 4 years. It's an immutable contract. So this gives assurances to both funders and members that there's going to be funding for them available to them in the future, just as long as they stick around and keep doing good work. So one of I would say the main focus is just getting people aware of what this organization is, why it's important long term, and then, similarly fundraising to that. So we always want to engage with the broader community, engage with the ecosystem, find projects that, this vision makes sense to them and they want to engage with it.
Yeah, I have to mention the fact that we met, right, when I was having a debate with somebody who's talking about the so-called like parasitic feature or nature of L2s and how essentially it's like marks like the downfall of like the ETH roadmap, by giving way to these L2 scaling. And I was very surprised by your view at the time, right? I mean, I think you still hold this view today, is that these L2s do provide a value to ETH, to the L1. And, just given the fact that we're at the Solana office today, right? And giving your view, I wanted to, just dive into that a little bit more. Like, what do you think of, the L2, maybe like in a broader sense, right? Like, how do L2 provide value to L1?
Yeah. So at a high level, I think this narrative mostly came from people who are not formally there's no formal membership, but I wouldn't necessarily consider them core Ethereum members. Like this idea, maybe a little bit of a psyops, and personally, I don't hold this view. I don't know many core developers who actually had this view for the past few years, this idea that layer 2s are parasitic. Completely reject this. Layer 2s are not that complex if you step back and think about it. They are resellers of Ethereum L1 block space, which maybe is counterintuitive at first, but really what they're doing is they're taking, blob space or call data or some resource that the Ethereum L1 provides, and they're using it to create more. So they're reselling some resource that would otherwise be used by people transacting on the L1. And this is a good thing. We want there to be demand for all of these resources, whether consensus, execution, data availability.
You want these food soldiers to do the selling for you.
So at a bare minimum, they provide structural demand for all of these things that we're providing. And it's very good that they come in different forms, different shapes, different sizes, EVM, SVM. If they're using different data availability layers, layer 2s can. This is the beauty of this architecture, is that you can have this differentiation, and not even to mention like you said, foot soldiers, the different biz dev teams who are going out into the world in a way that the Ethereum Foundation, it may not be suited to do, or there's just different capacities and capabilities that all of these other teams have. And they provide a structural demand for all these resources, which we want people to use. Right. And they provide demand for ETH, the asset, which is, again, these are all good things that we ultimately want people to consume.
Yep.
And so I just flat out reject the L2s are parasitic.
Yeah, and it's really funny that the same group of people who had the view, that the L2 existence of the L2 is like marking the downfall of ETH L1, is the same group of people now is cheering for ETH L1 because we're back into this bull market, right? Where ETH is like priced up by a lot. So
not my phrasing, but it's often said that narrative follows price.
Exactly.
I mean,
nothing has changed on the L2 roadmap, right?
Yeah,
so
L1 and L2, it's like this consistent, I would say pretty steady progress. People understand what the goals are, what the long-term roadmap is. It's really the narratives outside of it, which...
Well, it's really the price of the token.
But yeah, the price has gone down and therefore the narratives follow. It's, for me, as somebody who works in core development every day, it is like a very hard media environment to constantly have people, criticizing you for things that are usually not in your control. Sometimes they are, but there's different context or nuance that maybe they don't care to incorporate into these opinions. But
trust me, I know.
I'm enjoying. Yeah, as a founder, it is really tough, and especially when you get to something foundational like an L1. You have a ton of people, a ton of stakeholders that are engaged in this, and you have to just do the hard work of coming to rough consensus, bringing stakeholders in, and then charting that path forward. There's a limit to what you can do in the short term, like you announcing a partnership or announcing a new product, or in the case of the L1, like increasing the gas limit, which just happened for Ethereum. We have increased block space by 50% this year. It's unlikely that this will have an effect in sentiment in the immediate term, but it's like an iterated game that plays out over 6, 12 months, years. This is when you will start to see the effect, but it's a question of knowing which things will have that impact long term.
Right.
Knowing the difference is the hard part.
Right. And I do think there is you rightfully mentioned, right? It's a delicate balance where you do need to care about the value that you're bringing to the users, right, of the chain. I think many, like you said before, right, the misconception about ETH or EF in general is like, oh, you guys don't care about the token price. I'm sure that's not what it is. It's just there's again only a certain level of things that you can do to protect the value of the overall net worth.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to maybe on that side, right? My personal sort of takeaway is I believe in building scaling solution for Ethereum. SVM is the right way to go about it. And we've been working on all these. The Soon stack itself is accelerating more adoption. People are using ETH on the underlying base layer, and by doing that and building our own product, right, the consumer app will help basically demonstrating the use case. But coming back to specifically what you guys are doing, in terms of kind of almost reversing, right, that sentiment in the community. You have done this huge reorg internally, right? You changed some leadership, and there's a lot of new fresh perspective being brought in along with that. So just can you tell me a little bit more about how does that impact the current vision, the current kind of roadmap of EF?
Yeah, so obviously I'll give the big caveat is I work at the EF, but I'm not in a leadership position or that hard work is left to other people happily.
Right. That's a hard seat to be in.
I can stay in my niche working on Protocol Guild, and I'm very happy to be doing that. But yeah, so I mean, context also if for anybody listening to this, if you've been around for the past few years, you will know that the regulatory environment in the U.S. was quite intense.
Yes.
The EF was under some form of investigation from the federal government. And while this doesn't, maybe doesn't explain the entire picture, that's definitely part of why the EF was maybe more cautious about how it engaged in the broader ecosystem, the kinds of projects it took on. And I think now that we are seeing, this is not just the EF, this is many projects in the Ethereum ecosystem and the broader crypto industry. It's there's clarity coming, literally, and in the case of this new legislation, there's a renewed ability for the federal government to engage with the industry. And this is, again, this isn't like the only factor, but it does make people more comfortable to engage in the broader ecosystem in ways that they didn't in the past. So that was, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Within the last 6 months, a lot has happened at the EF. So there's a new pair of co-executive directors, Tomasz and Xia Wei. They have been, I think since March, kind of rebooting and reorging a couple different characteristics of the EF. Maybe most importantly, the personnel. So there were these two big reorgs that I think happen in any organization, where periodically, after a couple of years, if it's not happening regularly, you kind of sit back and think, what sort of structure or what kind of personnel framework do we need for this present moment? So one of them was announced, I think, a couple months ago for the protocol team. This is the core devs and researchers who work on the L1. And they came out of that saying, okay, here's a new team structure where we're more focused on these particular goals, these particular software outputs, and we want to scale the L1, increase the gas limit, scale L2s, give them more data availability, give them room to grow, and improve the interop between all of these two components, the L1 and the L2s.
And between
L2s.
Yeah.
So this is like the three, the guiding lights for where we're going for the next 6, 12, 18 months. And from my perspective, this is very welcome. It's great to have a reassertion of what we already knew, but like sometimes writing it down is super helpful. So that happened. The protocol team was reorged, and I think have been doing a great job of settling into that new structure. And then equally as important, the eco dev team, the ecosystem development team, which is, they're providing support to projects, to the developer community, to enterprises, to institutions. This was also revamped. And there's a number of new teams at the EF that previously didn't exist, like the institutional team and the enterprise team, and a couple other ones that I think are going to be announced in the near future. But or like there's a new application support team, which didn't exist before, or wasn't in this formalized shape. So all of these changes are a recognition that maybe there was a deficit in this kind of work for the past few years for, again, some reasons in and out of our control. But I think what matters is that these have been recognized, taken into account, and changes have been made. And I'm biased, but I think the community has also recognized this. Like there's new energy. The EF is taking a much, much more proactive stance in engaging with the immediate Ethereum community, but also all the people we hope will come and use our infrastructure.
Right. The community definitely is rallying around this. There's a drink tonight. I mean, just FYI, there's a drink tonight at the ETH Bushwick by Ansem, who's like, I'm going to host this drink and buy everyone drink. If the ETH price is above 3,000. He said that like a month ago, and then now it's
wonderful.
Yeah. Now here we are. So actually I'm curious because I didn't know this. So thank you for bringing up the fact that you guys have a new institutional team and enterprise team. So what are your thoughts on the current? I think there's like kind of like the crypto use case of left curve and the right curve, right? So the very left curve is like degens, right? Folks that could engage in speculative moves. They typically choose Solana. And I would say for the right curve, it's like the RWA, the institutions, right? Like new, like Wall Street traditional finance investors who are just entering into crypto. Robin, who is a good example of this, right? They chose to build on top of ETH or ETH L2 here. So curious on your thoughts, right? Maybe on this red curve side of crypto use case, like what do you think is the sort of competitive edge of EF or Ethereum? And why are people kind of flocking to Ethereum for like these tokenized assets as we onboarding Wall Street on chain?
I think the important context here is that we are headed for a world of, at least in the digital world, we're headed for resource abundance. Ethereum is going to scale. It's just a matter of time. The L1, we are in the process of an order of magnitude increase in the data availability that we offer to L2s. It's not a question of if, but when. So all of these things are going to happen, and this is very good and necessary. One thing that you can't rush or you can't get around is trust, is stability, uptime. These things you can't kind of work your way around this. Ethereum has been live for 10 years with 100% uptime. This isn't something you can, hack your way around technologically. And in the same way, institutions see this and they want to build on something that gives them this stability, this uptime, this dependability, the robustness, the censorship resistance, which may seem like a crypto native. We have these idealized vision of the world.
Decentralization maxi.
Right, decentralization maxi. But legitimately, institutions do recognize that this censorship resistance and the nitty-gritty details.
Why else would you bring your assets on chain?
Exactly. So they recognize these things, and I think this is borne out in things like the Robinhood team choosing to build on Arbitrum. And I think there was a quote, and if I'm slightly off, forgive me, but the quote was something like, "We wanted to be a landlord, not a tenant. We wanted to have some structure that we could define how it works." And I mean, this goes back to the Cosmos vision of sovereign chains where you can define the frameworks, you can define what your VM is, and like in isolation this makes sense. But what we're seeing is that institutions and enterprises, they recognize not just the customization. Again, you can choose your own VM, but you are locking into all of the tried and true uptime of Ethereum mainnet, its L2s, like robust engineering practices. It's not just that you need infinite TPS, which again, I think we will be in a world of abundance in the near future. But one thing that you can't fake is all of those other attributes: uptime, dependability, trust, stability, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the fact that there's the TVL side, right? Also just like how much.
I completely missed that.
How much asset is parked on ETH or ETH L2s, and the liquidity there.
And I think that is actually in the same way that narrative is downstream of price.
Yeah.
Like TVL is downstream of people. I've heard this from some whales indirectly of like, I don't trust putting my money on X chain or whatever.
Because the TVL is not at this threshold.
I'm saying like they don't trust whoever is running the validators. It's like, I'm not comfortable putting a lot of money in that location.
I see.
And so I think what we see on Ethereum mainnet is the TVL is so high because it has a really high trust for these high net worth individuals, or just in aggregate, many, many small users. They know that the guarantees of Ethereum are going to be available in the long term. And that's I think the TVL is downstream of users saying, okay, I'm comfortable putting large amounts of assets in this particular location. And this may not actually hold when you extend it to other environments, depending on how the chain is designed or the security profile of the construction.
Yeah, definitely bullish. Seeing all the the micro strategy of ETH emerging. I mean, it's just as you said, right? Like the like Bitcoin kind of became like the first asset that people see as a store of value now. That actual some money is coming back, right? That whole like I'm starting to hear people talk about this again. Almost like seeing ETH as the other sort of value, right? That's I just think it's really interesting that it's a continuous effect, right? As we continue to see like institutions coming in, this sort of like overflowing, trust score will just continue to go down, and impact more assets. Very excited about the current setup for you guys, and for you personally, I think there's a lot of exciting news on the horizon. So thank you again for having to being on the show, and we look forward to having another.
For sure. And if I can end with one more plug,
please.
There are projects in the Ethereum, or you use the EVM in some way, and on the off chance you're looking for ways that you can contribute back to, like I mentioned at the beginning, closing this value loop of you're building some incredible product that uses whether the EVM or depends on Ethereum. You have some existential relationship to Ethereum in some way. and you're interested in funding the people that make it possible, DM me. My DMs are open, Trent.eth or Trent_Van Epps. I'd love to talk to anybody who kind of grasps hold of this as well, and we can make something happen.
Yeah, this includes SVM L2s too.
SVM L2s, any kind of L2 that has a dependency on Ethereum, the network itself. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful.
For sure. You heard it from the source. We'll be talking soon.
Wonderful.
Thanks.